Yeah, this is the Gangster Movie Guru podcast. This is your host, Kwaku King Nabby, the Gangster Movie Guru. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. Before we get down to business, I just want to say that it's a beautiful day, a great day. I appreciate all those who have liked, subscribed, viewed, commented. I appreciate it sincerely. I ask that everyone who hasn't already done it, please like, please subscribe, please comment, please share. It's appreciated greatly. And if you don't, I'm going to find you and break both of your legs. At any rate, to give you a quick, brief background on myself, I graduated from film school in 2012. I've worked on music videos, promos, short films for a variety of production companies, musicians, as well as political figures, local nonprofit groups, for-profit groups, all types of stuff. You can see examples of some of my work. I'll leave links down below. In addition, I have important projects coming up in the near future. However, all that isn't really relevant right now. The reason why we're here is to speak about gangster movies. And the reason why I'm the guru of gangster movies is because I've been watching gangster movies all my life. Not only do I know the technical side of the craft of film, not only do I have an eye open for the artistic side of film, I've also just had the experience of watching these films over and over again, talking to my friends, arguing with them, hearing samples and clips from them on my favorite rap albums of all time, by my favorite rappers of all time. I've quoted these movies countless times, countless occasions, and this is basically a show where I get to sit here and speak on them and just have fun because that's just what I feel like doing. You know what I mean? So leave your comments down below. Let me know how you feel. Everything that's said on this show is and always will be the opinion and the point of view of your host, the Gangster Movie Guru, Kwaku King Nabby. If you don't like it, I don't care. We're going to keep it moving. Let's go. Today's movie is none other than the 1972 classic, directed by Gordon Parks Jr., with the classic, iconic soundtrack by Curtis Mayfield, starring the incomparable Shakespearean theater trained actor and thespian Ron O'Neal. Rest in peace to all three of those brothers, Gordon Parks, Curtis Mayfield, and Ron O'Neal. Today we're going to get into the classic, gangster classic movie, all-around classic film, Superfly. Let's get into the trailer.
This dude is bad, and he ain't just fly. He's Superfly, yeah, Superfly. When it comes to women, they come to him, but it's still not enough. He wants a big score, $1 million in cash, yeah, the big one.
This is a chance, and I want to take it now, before I have to kill somebody. Before somebody ices me.
What kind of money are we talking about?
Not much.
I want his ass out working.
Now, then I took all this chance for nothing. And I go back to being nothing. Working some jive job for chump change day after day. Look, if that's all I'm supposed to do, then they're gonna have to kill me, because that ain't enough.
Ain't I clean, bad machine, super cool, super mean, dealing good for the man, Superfly. Here I stand, secret stash, heavy bread, baddest bitches in the bed. I'm your pusher man.
Can a Superfly Harlem dude beat the system? He's got a plan to stick it to the man. He's super hood, super high, super dude, super fly.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that trailer. I like how it captured the feel with the voiceover, with the music. It really captured the heart of the film. And although it wasn't edited in a modern style, if I had seen that trailer, if I viewed that trailer today, I'd definitely purchase a ticket and see that movie in theaters tonight. This is one of the most important films, being that it was one of the first movies of the black film renaissance of the early 70s, the late 60s, early 70s. See, prior to this, we had filmmakers. I know Oscar Micheaux, who was the first black filmmaker in the history of film. He did silent films as well as talkies. You had superstar actor Sidney Poitier up to this at this point in time. However, you didn't really have black films that were made by black filmmakers starring black actors that were shown in theaters until we came with Melvin Van Peebles, who directed and created Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. That really opened the door and opened the floodgates for a whole lot of movies to come out after it, movies that are, so-called blaxploitation films. To give you a little light on that, an exploitation film is typically a lower budget, quote unquote, B movie. The reason why it's called exploitation is because it usually exploits either gratuitous violence or, over the top sexual themes or whatever in order to sell the movie or to get people in seats. It's usually thin on story and the acting isn't all that good. However, you'll see a lot of TNA and you'll see a lot of blood and explosions and all that. In order to degrade movies such as Superfly, certain members of the media called it blaxploitation, basically saying that it was the black version of an exploitation film and in essence a lower quality film. However, there's a lot of classic films that were exploitation films. Superfly was beyond the exploitation film. In budget, yes, it was sort of B-movie-ish or exploitation-ish. However, as far as the themes and the performances, especially by Ron O'Neal and Carl Lee, it was on a mainstream level of filmmaking, in my opinion. And the photography of the film, which was, Gordon Parks Jr.'s vision, was amazing. You can see more about this. I watched this documentary called the Superfly documentary, One Last Deal. It came out on video in 2004. However, I don't know if it's still available. You can search on YouTube. If anybody knows that it's available, put that down in the comments. However, other than that, you can search on YouTube Superfly documentary and it should come right up. It's about a 30-minute documentary, really interesting, with a lot of the people that were involved in the film are interviewed and speak in that documentary. The difference between Superfly and these other films that had come out prior to it is that Superfly starred a gangster. Starred a drug dealer named Priest. He was a coke dealer who was sniffing coke throughout the entire movie, living the life. When it starts, he's already on top. He got 50 men in the streets, him and his partner, Carl Lee. He's got his car. We'll get into that. He's got his clothes. We'll get into that. He's got his white woman. We'll get into that. Prior to this, as I said before, you had Sweet Sweetback. And you had Shaft, which came out a year before this. Now, Shaft was actually directed by Gordon Parks Sr., the father of the director of this film. So, interestingly enough, with Shaft, done by his father, it was more of a classic good guy, more quote-unquote noble type of black man. And Richard Roundtree, who played Shaft, who was a private investigator, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So he was on the right side of the law, quote unquote, and he sets a a quote unquote good example for people, and of a noble character that could be a hero and stick it to the man and all that type of stuff. What Shaft did, what Gordon Parks Jr. did, or excuse me, what Superfly did with Gordon Parks Jr. and Ron O'Neal, is that they totally flipped it and had the gangster be the hero, which we hadn't seen really up to this point. And not only was the gangster the hero, but the gangster also stuck it to the man, and he also lived and rode off in the sunset, on his horse per se, at the end of the movie. So it was revolutionary in its time for that reason. His whole essence, his style, his quote, the quotes, the things he said has been used. The only person who I think has been quoted more from this era is Goldie, who was played by Max Julian in the movie The Mac. And a lot of people mix up the Mac with Superfly because of the name Superfly. You automatically think of the Mac. We'll get into the Mac another time too. That's definitely a film that I'll speak about. However, so he was the Mac. Goldie is probably the only other character from that time that's quoted more than Priest, Superfly. And there's a big reason for that. One other reason is the music. The soundtrack of Superfly, composed by Curtis Mayfield's Experience, led by Curtis Mayfield, of course, is second to none. It's a benchmark. To me, it's one of the greatest. It's definitely top 3 to me soundtracks in film history, bar none. I don't care what you say. I don't care. I don't want to hear nothing about, but the score for Star Wars and so I don't care about none of that. Top 3, possibly number 1 soundtrack scores of all time is composed by Curtis Mayfield in this film Superfly. And it's a mixture of soundtrack with the music that he sang and just the score, which was basically instrumental from him and his band. Amazing. So many songs. My favorite song being Little Child Running Wild, which starts off the film. However, Freddy's Dead, which is the theme, for the opening credits, is probably the most loved and most well-known and sampled. And then, of course, you have the Superfly theme. So now we're going to get into the people involved in actually creating the film. The film was produced by Sig Shore. He's a gentleman from the Bronx who financed the film. It was guerrilla filmmaking at its best. They didn't have the most money to create the film. However, they had the grit. They had to, run and gun through different locations. You can just tell by how the film was captured and how the film moves, that it really just captured that authenticity of the city. It's not so much of a staged film that we're used to today, to where everything is kind of perfect. You kind of feel the vibe of what's going on as you're watching it because of the guerrilla style. I think that really added to it, and that really gave the movie the flavor that it has and the authenticity that it has. It was written by Philip Fenty. Philip Fenty is a writer who was originally from Cleveland and was friends with Ron O'Neal. And he wrote about a 45-page screenplay. And Gordon Parks Jr., the director of the film, was able to turn that screenplay into an hour and 30-minute film gloriously. Now, both Philip Fenty and Sig Shore, this would be pretty much the largest project that they would be involved in, or the most well-known project that they would be involved in, which goes for a lot of people. The editor was Bob Brady. After this, he did Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. He was also a co-editor on Beat Street. You have the cinematographer, who was James Signorelli. He didn't do too much other work in film. However, he was a huge producer for Saturday Night Live. He directed some episodes as well. Film-wise, he did some direction with Police Academy 2, which was uncredited, I believe. And he also did Rodney Dangerfield, the movie Easy Money. Now let's get to the director of the film, Gordon Parks Jr., the son of Gordon Parks Sr., who, as I said previously, directed Shaft. Gordon Parks Jr., this was his directorial debut with Superfly, actually, which is an amazing feat. He would have had many more under his belt, I truly believe, if it wasn't for him unfortunately passing in 1979, about 7 years after this film came out. Gordon Parks Jr. passed in a plane crash while he was in production in Kenya. So, however, he was able to do Three the Hard Way. I mean, you could just see that he was making that progress. Superfly was a revolutionary film in its own right, and he had an extraordinary vision for capturing that gritty life and really capturing black life in a special way. He'll be missed, and I know that had he not passed away, he would have really excelled in the film business, and he would be known as one of the greatest directors of all time. Excuse me. Now, as for the stars of the film, most of the stars of the film, there were a lot of amateur actors or a lot of actors who had not really done any kind of acting work or weren't trained actors per se. For most of the actors, this is their biggest film, which is a feat in itself, being that this is one of the most popular films of all time. And, as far as gangster movies go and as far as black movies go, it's definitely a cult classic. The main star, of course, Superfly himself, Priest, is Ron O'Neal. Now, Ron O'Neal was a classically trained actor. He was raised in Cleveland, which is where he met Philip Fenty, which is how Fenty got in contact with him to star in Superfly for him and Gordon Parks. So Ron O'Neal, at the time, though, he was living in New York City. He was doing stage plays, Shakespearean, plays. He was doing poetry, things of that nature, a lot of classic theater work. And he was approached about this film. And once he, was able to see the screenplay and see what kind of film they were producing, he was definitely excited about the film, and he played the character Priest to a T. His acting in this film is immaculate. He really captures the evolution of Priest from an emotional level, from a physical level, everything. He did an amazing job. You have the next co-star is Carl Lee, who's an actor. This, of course, also was his biggest film. He does a great job playing the role of Eddie, who's Priest's right-hand man in the film. You have the gorgeous Sheila Frazier, who is just beautiful, just a goddess in this film, and played Priest's main lady, who was his motivation or his backbone, who was the one that gave him the strength to make that evolution as a character into getting out of the life and whatnot. You have Julian Harris, who has been in a number of other black films in the 70s. He plays Scatter. You have an interesting character, Charles McGregor, who plays Fat Freddy. Freddy's dead, and Charles McGregor actually was not an actor. He actually just came home from jail prior to playing this role, so he was actually a guy that was in the streets. However, he plays a character that's kind of the opposite of who he is in real life, according to what they say, that he was a pretty raw, tough character in real life. In the movie, he's more of a softer guy, who's just trying to get his hustle on, but he's not trying to get his hands dirty. And, his lady is manipulating him, taking his money, all that type of stuff. So he plays that really well. And then you have Nate Adams, who's actually the wardrobe designer, interestingly enough. He owned a wardrobe shop, a fashion clothing store, in Harlem at the time. And he provided clothes for all of the men in the film. So that was really interesting. And that's why the film is so authentic, because they had so many real people who were really in that, who really knew what it was like being in Harlem and being in the Lower East Side and being on Broadway and all that time and all of that in the 70s, when it was really, flashy, when it was gangsters out all the time, when, it was just a lot of really fun things going on. Every day was a party, but then there was a dark side to it too, of course. Now we're going into the film breakdown portion of the podcast. The portion of the podcast where we break down the storyline of the film and the hero, the gangster that's running things in the film and that's got to go from nothing and become something, or however the story depicts it. Now, if you want to talk about story, the original hero's journey, the original hero's story started in Kemet, as far as what's been documented or what's been recorded on the walls of the pyramids and the structures in Egypt. You know, and in these Kemetic stories, the stories of Heru, Osiris, and what have you, certain archetypes were created, certain personas, certain characters that have certain qualities were created, and these characters, these archetypes reoccur and are seen in stories that have come after them, or that have come after the Kemetic stories, in the same way, however, with different names and with certain variations, you know, to adapt to whichever culture it came from. Of course, these stories we call mythologies. So you take Greek mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, all of these mythologies, whatever mythology it is, Polynesian, these mythologies are all based on the original Kemetic stories and all carry these same archetypes. Joseph Campbell, the most well-known name in the study of mythology, the most well-known recognized name and most well-known specialist in the study of mythology, wrote a novel called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. I use this novel sort of as a textbook. And in this novel, he goes through, you know, pretty much all of the mythologies and the similarities. He has a few other books on myth, which titles are leaving my head right now, but which also show the similarities in different mythologies over time. Now, from this, Christopher Vogler, who wrote The Writer's Journey, was able to kind of consolidate it and adapt it and create the 12 stages of the hero's journey. And that's the detailed, I guess, outline that we're going to use just to show how the gangster also goes through these steps as the hero in these films. Let's get into it. We're going to start with Act 1, which is the intro, where we see the hero in his domain, in his natural habitat. After we transition from the junkies and Little Child Running Wild playing, we go into Priest, who's, you know, laid back in the bed with his side joint, the white chick who's on the bed next to him, and of course Priest is sniffing coke off the Ankh. Now the Ankh, interestingly enough, is the Egyptian symbol for life. Right now, Priest's whole life is coke. That's it. He's sniffing coke, he's selling coke. He's got a cocaine white girl, you know, right next to him. Everything is coke. And you see that throughout the movie, and you see that from the intro. Like, this is his life, so we know where we are right now. And then when we go from there, when he leaves, he's walking through the streets of New York. We know that this is a New York City gangster movie. He's dressed down to the T, laid, everything. We see the car as the credits roll, and the theme song, Freddy's Dead, which is the most recognizable song off of the Superfly soundtrack. I'd say that, and then probably Pusha Man. As that music is playing, we see the car. We see the 1971 El Dorado drop top coupe, the Cadillac with the egghead lights, the flying lady on the hood ornament, the Rolls Royce grill, and we see the title come up, Superfly. Now we know exactly what this movie is. This man is at the top of the game right now. He's doing his thing. He's got everything that a man at that time could want. He's living the American dream, or so it seems. By the way, that car was created or modified, I should say, by Les Dunham, who owns Dunham Coach in New Jersey. The interesting little fact or tidbit about the car is that it was actually owned by a pimp named KC, who makes an appearance in the film. KC owned the ride, and I believe it was Nate Adams saw him one time while they were both getting their shoes shined and asked him about the car, to use the car. KC agreed, since they liked KC and he was so nice and was able to do it and was able to let them use the car. They also gave him a quick, role in the movie, a few lines when they meet in the club, in the Scatters Club. So that was cool. The actual modification job was something that was popular at the time, with pimps and hustlers in New York City, and Les Dunham was the go-to guy. So not only Casey, but Casey and all his friends, they ended up being friends with Les Dunham. They gave him mad business back in the day, and Les Dunham still does it to this day. Hopefully I'll be able to cop one for myself. You know what I'm saying? At some point in time, assuming that he's still around. If not, if he retires or whatever, that he hands it down to somebody who's just as capable as he is. But shout out to Casey and shout out to Les Dunham on the Superfly mobile. Now, we go to the inciting incident. The inciting incident in a hero's journey or in a story is also known as a call to adventure. It's the moment that happens in the story that's going to that's going to set basically the theme and the tone or the conflict and tension for the rest of the picture, for the rest of the movie that you're watching. Is what's basically going to kind of propel the hero into action or cause him to kind of wake up and say, hold on, I need to do something. The inciting incident in this story, in Superfly, is a combination of when he gets robbed and when it transitions into him having to put Freddie to work because Freddie owes him money. I'm not going to speak too much about that scene. I'm going to roll the tape on that because it's such an iconic scene, and then we'll get into speaking on the inciting incident a bit more. Roll tape.
Okay. What's happening?
Fat Freddy, man.
What's the matter with the fat man?
The dude ain't got your money. Well, he's been all stretched out, like he's coming some money or something.
That's his ass.
He's good for it. It's that bitch of his, that's the problem.
I got 50 men out on the street now. If they all get bitch troubles, I starve. Is that it? Is that what you're trying to tell me, dude?
Freeze, do what you want to do.
I want his ass out working.
Listen, Priest, you know me, man. You'll get your money.
Yeah, when? This ain't the first time for you, Trick. I've had to wait for as long as a month on you for my money. Now, you trying to take advantage of me, Freddie. This time your black ass is going to work.
Priest, all I do is sell coke, man. I don't do no violence. I don't mess with no fire. No
Listen,
guns.
nigga, don't argue with me,
violence,
man. I'm trying to give you a chance. Now, you don't get me my money tonight. I'm gonna put that young girl of yours out on Horse Road.
Listen, Priest, that's my wife you talking about, man.
So what?
So yeah, although we don't necessarily know it at that time of watching the movie, him having to go at Priest like that starts to make him, Priest having to go at Freddie like that starts to make Priest feel like, hold on, what's the life that I'm living right now? Where is this gonna go? Because if he doesn't get me my money tonight, as he said, first off, he said he's going to put his wife on Horror's Road, but then out on the track. But if he doesn't do that, he's going to kill Freddie. Eventually, it's going to have to come to that because Freddie's just, he's on his last nerve right now. So this is the point to where we see where the movie's going. We see that, okay, this is a big time hustler. He has 50 men in the streets. He's really the man. We've seen him with his lady. We've seen his clothes. We've seen his cars. Now we've seen his workers and that he's really the boss of this. So we transition throughout. We see kind of different things that are going to lead up to the climax of the first act and the transition into the second act. We see him meet with Carl Lee's character, his right-hand man, Eddie. And this is really the rising action, as they say, change of plans, the first act climax, where Priest comes to Eddie and he says that he wants out. This is another iconic scene. I'm going to roll tape on this, and then we'll come back. Roll tape.
I had to put Freddie out to work.
Hey, you don't mean Fat Freddy. You didn't, man. Hey, you're gonna give that hard luck nigga a heart attack. Okay, what's wrong with you, nigga? It's funny. Dragged me out of the crap game and put me up here. What is it, man?
I'm getting out, Eddie.
Getting out of what?
The cocaine business.
Oh, sweet Jesus. Man, those junkies must have knocked a hole in your head. You gonna give all this up? 8-track stereo, color TV in every room, and can snort a half a piece of dope every day. That's the American dream, nigga. Well, ain't it? Ain't it? You better come on in, man.
Yeah, so that scene is so interesting to me because of Eddie's rebuttal when Priest first said that he wants out. And Eddie, talks to him about how they're living the American dream right now. And that's kind of the thing, in the Western world, in America, we're kind of raised and told what the American dream is, whether it's, the house, the white picket fence, the nice car, the this and that. And those are all things that, as people, we deserve. We deserve to see the fruits of our labor. However, at times, people look to those things to achieve happiness as opposed to having those things add to the happiness that you're already experiencing, if you understand where I'm coming from. So for Priest in that moment in his life, he had achieved all these things. He had the money, he had the drugs, he had the power, he had the woman, he had the material things. However, he didn't have the peace of mind. And that's because he was looking to those things to give him peace of mind as opposed to achieving peace of mind and then letting those things just add to that in abundance, if you feel where I'm coming from. Money's not going to make you happy, but money can help add to your happiness. Money's not going to make you free, but money can help add to your freedom by giving you that peace of mind of not having to worry about this and that and certain things. And that's the stage that Priest was at. In contrast, Eddie was like, we're living the life. What do you want? I'll die like this. It doesn't matter. It's, this is all that we can do. Priest is like, nah, I know that there's more than I can do. And I know that I deserve better than this. I'm supposed to be living like a king. And I'm not quite living like a king because I don't know if I'm going to kill somebody or if I feel like, or if somebody's going to kill me, tomorrow. So if I don't have the peace of mind, how am I really living? So that's where you see that evolution of Priest. Within this conversation, you see it in his face. Eventually, he convinces Eddie to be down with him to that, if he could get the keys from Scatter, then they'll work it out. And then that's where you go to Scatter's club and to that point in the stages of a hero's journey that they call the meeting the mentor. And even in a gangster film like this, we have a meeting of with his mentor, who is Scatter, and he meets Scatter to get the 30 keys. Eventually, he's able to convince Scatter to do this, to purchase or to provide them with the keys that they need so he could get out the game, so he could get the big one, the big million, and be out. We go to the next stage where everything is pretty much all good. Now he's partying. KC, the pimp that I spoke about not too long ago, comes into the scene. He gets his money from Fat Freddy. Everybody's in good spirits. And there's a moment where we see kind of Priest is not knowing if he's just messed up and said something bad around people that he can't trust, or if he's going to be all right. And this is that, that next stage after crossing the threshold in a hero's journey of the tests, with the allies and the enemies. And that's when he accidentally mentions that he's grabbing the key from Scatter. And you see the look on his face. He kind of pauses like, oh shit, I said Scatter. I shouldn't have said his name. You know what I mean? And then this, of course, goes in later because we see what Fat Freddy does. So after this, we'll get to that in a second. After this, he goes he's in the bathtub with Sheila, Frazier's character. Now, in the film, I don't remember her ever being called by name, like ever being named Georgia, but in the end credits, it definitely says Sheila Frazier plays Georgia, so we'll just call her character Georgia, or Sheila Frazier, whatever comes out of my mouth. So, Sheila Frazier, she is so sexy. This is one of the sexiest love scenes. They're in the bathtub, let's say in the jacuzzi with the soap, you know, the bubbles, the bubble bath going. Excuse me, it took me a while to get there, but the bubble bath going in the lavish bathtub, lavish 70s decorated, beautiful bathtub. And she's explaining to him how she just wants to be there for him. She loves him and she just wants to be his everything. She doesn't care. She understands what he does. She understands why he smokes some Chiba to calm his nerves. She understands that he's in the streets. However, she understands the good side of him. She knows the real him, and that's who she loves. And she just wants him to understand that and to open himself up to her and love her the same way, or allow her to love him. So they have a little conflict, and boom, it's like it finally hits Priest, because now Priest is home. You know what I mean? He's at home with his queen. It finally hits him that, yo, she's right. I need to do this. He catches her hand. He starts kissing her. And what ensues is one of the sexiest love scenes of all time. Sheila Frazier, all due respect. Yeah, oh my gosh, her body, like, you just, the way that Gordon Parks films it, you just see just like her ass in one shot and her legs, and then like a thigh here. It's not gratuitous, however, it's in slow motion, and you're getting just all the best parts and curves, and it's exhibiting the true beauty of a woman's body. Like, there's an art. To me, there's no art to a male's body. A woman's body is God. A woman's body is divine. A woman's body is an art form, and you see that in that love scene with Sheila Frazier. And it's just gorgeous. It's just an amazingly shot love scene that actually gives off like sexiness and love. You know what I mean? Instead of just hardcore fucking and, you know, and lust. You know what I'm saying? This is like, we look like we're watching magic happen between two people, and they're really creating and doing some true alchemy, true sexual alchemy with what they're doing. And that slow motion just brings it home. It's just a lovely scene. Of course, the music is, I believe the title of the song is Give Me a Love, and it's by Curtis Mayfield, as everything is beautiful, gorgeous. After this, we transition to the first half climax, the ordeal, the point of no return. This is a point in the film that's actually two scenes intercut. The one scene is Freddie in the interrogation room getting smacked up by the DTs. He ends up snitching on Scatter and Priest. And of course that, you know, because Priest made that mistake and accidentally mentioned Scatter's name. So now he let the narcos know that Priest was connected to Scatter. And that Scatter was still in the game. And that's intercut with Priest taking a walk with Sheila Frazier's character, with Georgia, through the park. And she got on the flyest white mink, the mink hat and the long mink fur, just straight fly 70s shit. At any rate, they're in the park talking, and Priest lets her know that he wants to get out the game and that he has a plan to get out. And we'll roll the tape on that audio so you can hear that real quick. Another iconic scene and very important scene in the film.
Look, maybe you should get out now before something really bad happens. I could be happy with the plain life of porn, even if only you were.
Look, what would I do? With my record, I can't even work civil service or join the damn army. If I quit now, then I took all this chance for nothing, and I go back to being nothing, working some jive job for chump change day after day. Look, if that's all I'm supposed to do, then they're gonna have to kill me, because that ain't enough. Come on.
What do you do when you get out?
I don't know. Not so much what we do, it's having a choice. Being able to decide what it is I want. Not just to be forced into a thing because that's the way it is. Gonna buy me some time, baby. Some time that isn't all fucked up with things we gotta do. Just to be free.
And will that make you happy?
I don't know. I don't know. I just know I can't be happy the way it is now. I never was.
So there we're at the point of no return, because basically what happens is that he's made after all these things are going down, Priest is set on the fact that he's getting out the game. He talks to his, there's no question now. Every incident that has led up to this point solidifies that he's gonna, there's no question he's not going back. He's not gonna backslide. He's gonna get this $1 million, move these 300 keys or move these 30 keys and get out the game. So, of course, this begin, we think that we're headed to that point. However, then we come to the major setback. And to really, what I like to, the major setback, the climax, the Act 3 climax, or the climax that leads us from Act 2 into Act 3, which is pretty much where the DTs catch up with Priest and Eddie and proposition them, basically buy him out and say that, you're not going through Scatter anymore, you're going through us, and we're going to be your supplier, we're going to be the plug, and you're going to sell for us. You'll make your money. Don't worry about it. We'll give you the same deal that Scatter would have gave you. And he gives them an offer that they can't refuse. Eddie is elated about it. Eddie's like, oh shit, we all, what I'm saying? We official now. We got the cops. The cops is the plug. What? We official. Priest, this is a major setback, because just when he's thinking, I'm just going to get out the game and I'm going to be good, now the cops are involved. And once the cops get involved, they basically own them. There's no getting out the game. Until if they want to get out the game, that's either death or in jail, definitely at this point, because they have no protection if they leave the police. So after this comes a montage, a controversial montage of still photography executed by Gordon Parks Jr. He's actually the one who took these photos of them dealing coke, people using the coke that they're dealing. Critics at the time and some people to this day say that, or because of a montage like this, and of course the actions of Priest through the movie, they feel like it's glorifying cocaine use and glorifying the selling of cocaine as well. If you look at just the images on the surface, I can see why they would feel that way. However, if you really look at the theme of the music and look beyond just the flashing, imagery, and actually sit there and listen to the story and absorb the film, then you'll realize that the theme of the film is that the American dream is based on what looks good. Happiness is what feels good. Things start to continue to go downhill as another major setback is when Scatter is killed. Prior to this, Scatter actually comes to Priest's girlfriend's house, at which point he's telling her that he's getting out the game, and she's like, no, you can't get out the game. This is all you know. This is what you do best. She's totally opposite of Priest's actual wifey girl. The side chick wants him to stay in that life because that's all that she knows him to be, and it's taking away from her lifestyle if he leaves. So Scatter comes through there, lets Priest know that the cops are on to him, and they basically took everything. They not only did he lose his club, bar, restaurant, whatever that was, he also lost all his weight, took his money, everything. He's done. He knows they're going to try and kill him, so he asks Priest for some money. Priest is like, yeah, I got 20 grand for you. We'll meet here at so-and-so. I'll hold you down with that, and then, you could catch a flight. He never gets to do that, never gets to meet up with Scatter. Scatter is killed. Now, it's killed by the police. Now, Priest automatically goes to Eddie, lets Eddie know what's going on. He's like, yo, we gotta dip, we gotta skip town. Eddie's like, nah, I'm not leaving because we got it too good now. We could be imagine how much we can make in 4 years. You know what I mean? We could be rich beyond measure. I'm not leaving the game right now. But he knows how Priest feels, so he's pretty much already set him up. After Priest gets the cash, you already know what happens. Cops, he's able to switch the briefcase, though, in the elevator with Sheila Frazier. At which point, the cops arrest Priest, and then we come to basically the conclusion of the story, the final climax, the final battle of the movie, the resurrection, where after Priest seems like he's down and he's dead, he's caught by the police. What is he gonna do? He has that information that Scatter gave him about the chief detective, which he handed to some real killers, some hitmen, and put the money on the chief detective's head. He lets, after beating up some guys and throwing the dude in the trash, Priest, which was a funny moment. Priest has the classic, maybe the most iconic for what I've heard about as far as the reaction when people watch this scene, and he basically stuck it to the man at the end of the movie, and people got up and were cheering and clapping. So I'll roll tape on that scene. You can watch that.
Do it. Yeah, go ahead. I'm to the point I ain't afraid to die. But you kill me and you and your whole fucking family die. I think you ought to know something. I had the very best killers there are. White killers. White ones, baby. So you better take good care of me. Nothing better happen to one hair on my gorgeous head. Can you dig it?
And that's the end of the film. We see the credits with in the foreground overlaid up on top of the needle of the Empire State Building in the background. Another gangster classic, Superfly, directed by Gordon Parks Jr., starring Ron O'Neal and Sheila Frazier, as well as Carl Lee and a host of others, written by Philip Fenty, composed by Curtis Mayfield on the soundtrack and on the score. And this just, I don't know exactly what to say, that hasn't already been said. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, any genre. It's just lovely to see a gangster movie where the gangster wins. And not only does he win, but he sticks it to the police. It's not even like he gives it to some other, people that are also in the game that possibly look like him. You know what I'm saying? He gives it to the man when the man is oppressing him. And I think that, we need films. I wouldn't say we need. I don't like to use the word need. However, it would be nice to see a modern version of this type of movie. I'm not saying reboot or remake Superfly. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. All I'm saying is that it would be nice to see a gangster film that's in the likeness as far as the gangster trying to get out of the game, having to fight against possibly the authorities to get out of the game, and the trials and tribulations that he goes through with the authorities, his crew, his lady, and all of that, and just see all that intertwined. This film is definitely rough around the edges. There's definitely things here and there, with the sound design and with the editing and stuff that may seem off by today's standards. There's acting performances that may seem over the top by today's standards as well. However, it cannot be questioned that the story transcends time. It cannot be questioned that Ron O'Neal's performance and his character, his aura in the film transcends time. It cannot be questioned that the writing of Philip Fenty, the creation, the visuals, the vision of Gordon Parks Jr. cannot be denied. It's just an overall gangster classic. Priest is high on the list of gangster bosses in movie history. There really isn't a shooter. Eddie is kind of on the same level as Priest, however, and that just shows the great contrast of the attitudes of the day. I mean, there's so many layers to this movie, and you really see the evolution of a man from a regular man living programmed in the Matrix and living by the rules of the Matrix, who evolves and uplifts himself and rises to be the hero and the god that he truly is. And of course, he had to have his goddess alongside him in order to achieve this. Had to go against the grain, had to take risks, had to do all of that. Superfly embodies all of those things. Please like, please subscribe. Many blessings to all who have viewed, all who have commented, all who have supported the show. This is episode 001. Please like, please subscribe, please comment once again. I'm the Gangster Movie Guru. Everything that I've said is the view and opinion of Kwaku King Nabby, the Gangster Movie Guru, and I'm out.
Mafioso,